Hello, my name is Joost Fijnemaan. I work for CROW, which is an organization in the Netherlands, and it's a knowledge platform for transport, public space and infrastructure. And we focus on all the phases of the construction process. So what do we do at CROW? First of all, we do research. For example, what's the ideal flow of traffic, safety on roads. Secondly, we make standards. We love standardization, so we go to all the best projects in the Netherlands and we see what's good in these projects, and we try to make this into a standard that can be used by everyone else. And to do that with success, of course, we have to transfer this knowledge. So we make a lot of publications. We have a website where people can find all these regulations and all these good standards that we have made. And there's something about the organization of CROW. We are an NGO, independent. We are not attached to any of the parties in the construction sector, but we serve them all. The way we work in CROW is that we gather experts from all the sides in the sector, and those experts, they decide together the standards that we want in the Netherlands. For example, how to build a road like this, or how to build a cycling path. Speaking of standardization, one of the most influential publications of CROW is this one. It's a big book and it's called the RAW standard. This is a standard of about, well, let's see, 1,500 pages. In these pages, well, almost everything in civil engineering is explained and is standardized on how to do. Whether it's asphalt, how to make asphalt roads, to cables under the ground, cables above the ground, everything in the waterworks, well, sewerage, everything, and everyone in the Netherlands knows about this, works with this. It's software which is, well, in which all of this information is captured, and both engineering firms and contractors and the municipalities and all the other parties, they work with it. So it's like a common language for everything we do in the Netherlands in civil engineering. And this is why the CROW has this unique position in the Netherlands, because we are the keeper of those sector-wide standards. So we are a very trusted party, and that's why we do not belong to the state or to the contractors or to the engineers, but we are really in between all of them. So this book, the RAW, is used in about 10,000 contracts every year. Small ones, also very big ones. Actually, all the small ones, one could say. But there's also another way of contracting, and that is with integrated contracts, because those RAW contracts are very detailed. They describe in detail what has to be done. And the other way to do business is in the integrated way, with a functional specification. So you describe what you want, but not exactly in detail what's the solution. You leave that to the contractor. But because we are aiming for playing a role in the entire process, we also look for ways and have guides on how to deal with procurement, how to deal with cooperation between the contractors and the awarding authorities. Stuff lately is very hot in the Netherlands is how to incorporate sustainability in contracts, but also in procurement procedures. What can you do about that? So we have guidelines for that as well. And for the final connection between my organization and the meat criteria that we are discussing today. I think it was 2007, CROW had a publication for a very rational way of dealing with meat criteria, and that is a way in which you no longer calculate price into points and quality into points, but instead you calculate quality and added value in euros. And because the price is also in euros, you get two components that you can easily connect to each other in ways of and use that to find the most economically advantageous tender. And this is where we will dive more into now. So let's talk about meat. Most economically advantageous tender in the Netherlands. On this slide I show you a graph, and from this graph you can see that before the first quarter of 2013, the meat criterion was used in about 20% of all tenders for construction works in the Netherlands. That changes quite dramatically from the first quarter of 2013 due to a new law we had, the new procurement law. And in this procurement law, already in 2013, there was a new rule that said you have to use the meat criterion, you have to use other things than just the price in your awarding criteria, unless you have a good reason not to, and you have to show that reason, you have to present that reason so everyone can see why you are only using the price criterion and not quality with it. This has changed the procurement practice quite a lot, because before we had like 20% meat, and afterwards this meat criterion we saw, and it's still that case in about 70% of all the publicly announced procurement procedures that we have in the Netherlands. To see what the effects were of this change in policy in the Netherlands, where you have to use meat unless, we asked the Economic Institute for the Construction Sector, an independent organization, just like my organization, very strong in analyzing data from the construction sector. We asked them, well, will you check for us what's the weight of the quality in the meat criteria that are being used? And then we saw in this first year after the changes, so to speak, that in the first category, and I made categories from those graphs that you see here, the first category, which is 0 to 20% weight of quality, so a very small amount of quality, we saw that 35% of all the meat tenders used a very small percentage. So they were, well, let's say they were still getting used to the idea, and they thought, well, let's start with a small part of quality and see what happens. Then we see the next group, 20 to 50% of quality, so that's quite, well, quite an amount of quality in your awarding procedure. And we saw that 47, almost half of all the meat tenders is in this category. Then we have a category where quality is really serious, playing a role. 50 to 80% of the awarding criteria, so this means only 50 to 20% is still price. And then we see that about 20% of all the meat tenders, we saw that. And well, you can imagine there is a scale even higher, and we call it category 4, where the weight is more than 80% for quality, so hardly any weight for price, but we didn't measure that at all in 2014. Well, it's good to remember those categories, and I will show you them more, because we're going to take a look in what is the effect of meat if you take a look at those different categories. What is the effect you get on the offers that you get if you use these different kind of categories, and that's what most of my presentation will be about. So I go to the next sheet, and the sheet might look a little complicated, but I will try to take you through it. And this means that first I have to take a look with you to the possible results of a meat tender. First I will tell you what I mean by a meat score. And the meat score we use here is a kind of score that is value based. So we take the price and we subtract from the price the added value by the quality, and then we get what we call an evaluation score, and the lowest evaluation score is the best bid. So now let's take a look at the graph with the 4 different possible winning tenders. In the graph I have plotted quality and price, with quality on the vertical axis and price on the horizontal axis, where the point where they intersect, that is the point where the price is the average price for all the bidders in the tender, and the quality is the average quality for all the bidders in the tender. So let's take a look at the sector A at first. Sector A, you can see you can win there if you have a very low price or a lower than average price, but also a lower than average quality. So if we go back to the example, for example, if there was a P3 with a price of, let's say, 600,000 and absolutely no quality at all, his score would be 600,000 and he would win the tender, and he would be in section A of this graph. So it's very close to what we are used to when we award on lowest price. You get the one who wins is the one with the lowest price and the quality that is just right, but no extra quality whatsoever. That's section A. Then we get to section B, and in section B you can win if you still have a price that is, well, let's say much lower than the average price, but you win from the very lowest price bidders by adding quality. So in section B there are those parties that add enough quality to their low price to beat the other bidders that have a low price only. And you see there you have an above average quality for a below average price. So that's a good section to be in. And it even gets better in section C, where there's still a lower than average price, but a higher than average, an even higher than average quality. So the quality, the amount of quality, extra quality you get there is quite a bit above the average. And the price is still below average, but not so much as in section B. And then the last one is section D. And in section D the price is a bit higher than the average price, but the quality is a lot higher. And that's also a way to win the tender. And that is, well, you could say in the example that could be P1 there, and he has quite a high price but so much quality that in the end he will get the best score. I would say the sweet spot would be somewhere in section C, where you can have a very reasonable price, not the lowest price, but a very reasonable price, at least a price lower than the average price, and still a quality that is quite a lot higher than the average quality. So there should be the sweet spot, I would say. Now, we had seen those categories with the weight of quality in the meat tender, and we know now where are the winning tenders, where they can be. And what I'm going to do now is combine those two. And I hope it's not getting too complicated, because of course I cannot answer any of your questions. And I hope these figures speak for themselves. Now let's see what we found with this Economic Institute for the Construction Sector. And what we did, yes, I have to explain that first, is that we took 128 meat tenders, real meat tenders that were actually from, that actually led to awarding the contract. 128 of them, so of which all of the biddings were publicly known, and also who won and for what price, with what quality. So everything was known, and we found 128 of them in the period of 2010 to 2014, and that was enough to, well, make it statistically relevant to show what the effects were. Let's take a look at what the results are. You remember the categories. So category 1 is a meat tender with a very low weight for quality. And if you have a meat tender in that way, then you will see that like half of the winners, so you have like a 50% chance that the winner is in your section A. So it is very much like bidding on the lowest price. We have a very low price and a lower than average quality. But the good news is the other 50% chance is that you have already, if you have a very small weight for quality, is that you are in sections B or C, which, well, C is, like I said, is the sweet spot, and B is already better than what you would expect in a lowest price tender. So you get a 50% chance to have a lower than average price and a higher than average quality. So you get extra quality and still have a low price. There's none in D, which is not very well, which was to be expected. Let's put it that way. Now we move up the weight of the quality from 0 to 20% to category 2 to 20 to 50%. And we see that the results change. So from these tenders, only 26% are still in section A. And we see that the rest, 75%, is in section BC. So from 50% you go to 75% in BC, and you also see that it's a bit more C than before. So you're getting closer to the sweet spot. You're getting more tenders in the area where the price is still, for all of these outcomes, the price is still lower than the average price in that tender offered by all the bidders, and the quality is definitely higher than the average. And then if we get to the next step, category 3, with 50% or between 50 and 80% weight of quality, if you compare it to price, then you see that you're out of section A. There's no one winning who is still, well, let's say, behaving like it's still price is the main thing. And it's, well, you can expect it, but it's what we actually measure as well. That's the tactics for contractors in this case, who think, well, I'm going to cut all quality and I'm still going to go for the lowest price. They're not going to win. We see that most of them are in B, and in C, especially C is rising quite a bit compared to the other categories. And we see some parties getting into category D, where you get a price, well, I won't say it's a price that's too high, but it's a price higher than the average, but with so much quality that they still manage to win. So it's very quality based in this category. So you probably wonder, once you start with meat, what are the chances that we still get the lowest price possible? Well, the lowest price possible is of course something that we cannot measure. What we could measure was in which cases is the lowest price in the competition that we organized, or that was organized, in which cases is it the contractor with the highest score was also the contractor with the lowest price. And that's what I'm showing in this slide. So if we take a look at the first category, the low weight for quality, you expect that in most cases the party with the lowest price will be the party that scores the highest, and indeed we see it 88%, and you see that the party with the lowest price is actually the party who wins. When we get to the next category, the category where you have 20 to 50% weight of quality, we weren't so sure which parties were going to win. And what we see, and that is a very interesting number, is that even in this case, in 74% of the cases, the party who had the best score was also the party with the best price, lowest price. If you are in this section, don't worry too much that you will pay a very high price for all this quality, because it shows in, well, at least in the Netherlands, in this period, that it's not the case. And it's going to change when you get to higher quality values. Category 3, 50 to 80% weight of quality, so a very lower weight of price, and then you see that even then it's still around 50% is of the winners still has also the lowest price. But you can also expect in 1/3 of the cases that you pay more than the lowest or the second lowest price. In total, we have seen that from all these 128 meat tenders, that in 70% of all those tenders, the one with the highest score was also the one with the lowest price. If we know that, we can ask ourselves, well, then does it have any sense? Because if we get the lowest prices anyway, will we get quality then? So we were looking, okay, the one who has won, did he also have the highest quality? First of all, let's take a look at the category where price is the highest, and the highest weight and small weight for quality, category 1. Then we see that even though we had 88% had the lowest price we saw in the last sheet, still 28% has the highest quality. So there are definitely, statistically seen, contractors who had both the lowest price and the highest quality. And then we see the second highest quality, you can add that as well, so you know there's still a very high quality in this group with people who also had the lowest price. But there's also quite a big category with a low quality, and that is, well, to be expected if quality weighs from only a small amount. Going to the next category, 20 to 50% weight of quality, and then we see things, well, shift. We see almost 75% of all the winners there have the highest or the second highest quality. And we also knew that the same amount is having the lowest price. So here we see that you have 3/4 lowest price and 3/4 of the winners have the highest quality. So you can, well, I hope you will feel the way I feel, is that here is something going on. It's something you might not have been expecting to start with, but this is what happens. If we take the weight of quality up a notch and we get to the 50 to 80% in category 3, then we see that you, in more than half of the case, you get the winner also has the highest quality, so the best plans for the best added value. And if you add also the second highest scores on quality, then you get to a 93%. It's only 7% who wins there with a very, well, I would say with a very sharp price, with a very low price, and a third or lower score on quality, 7% of the cases this party would win. And in all the other cases, 93%, it's really quality that matters, and that makes the difference here. I've added all these numbers together in one final conclusion, and this, I hope, shows what happens if you are using meat compared to if you are not. Altogether, if you take all those 128 meat tenders together, you see that the price of the winner was, on an average, 12% below the average prices that were presented by all the bidders in all those 128 meat tenders, and the quality was 24% more than the average quality. So, well, that's what in the Netherlands in the period of 2010 and 2014, what we could measure, what the effects were of meat. Now, meat also comes with a cost, and that is a cost, a different one than we saw in the results of the tenders, but that's a cost on what we call transaction costs, so costs that have to be made on one hand by the tenderers, so the parties who make their bids, and on the other hand by the awarding authorities. Let's first start with the tenderers. What we asked the tenders was what are the average costs for a tender from 100,000 euros, 1 million euros, and 5 million euros if you are into a tender with the lowest price, or if you are into a bidding procedure with meat. And then we see quite a lot of difference between those two. So you see that what you have to do for the lowest price is, well, make your price, so calculate, and that costs a lot of hours to do that. But once you have to add to the calculation the things you have to do for your meat, your quality criteria, then this adds more even than the hours that you need to calculate. Well, I put that in an example. Contractor X has 20% success rate in tenders, which, well, I think is if you have a chance 1 in 5 to be the winner. if 5 other tenderers or 6 or 7 are into this tender, then that's not a strange number. This means that for a 1 million euro turnover, he has to apply for 5 tenders if that is his business, to get to win tenders for 1 million. In case of the lowest price, he has to calculate 5 times. It costs him 12,500, and if you compare that to the turnover, it's 1.25% of the turnover he gets. In case of meat, this 1.25% increases to 3% of his turnover. Like I said, it's not only on the side of the contractors, also on the side of the contracting authorities is meat costing more, and it's even a bigger change there. Because if we take a look only at the procurement procedure, and so we have all the technical stuff is done, and then we start a procurement procedure on the lowest price. This would take 6 to 8 hours to do that, and the evaluation of lowest price, of course, very simple. And if you do the same with a meat criteria, it would cost you 6 to 10 days as a contracting authority. You go out from the same technical contract stuff, but you add something in quality criteria. Well, to create it, you have to gather a couple of persons together and discuss about it. What is reasonable? How are we going to weigh it? How we're going to describe it in the text? And once you get the results of the tenderers, you have to evaluate their scores. And that also means it's not something one person can do behind the desk and say, okay, well, I like this one the most, and he's going to get it. No, it has to be in a procedure. You have to have a few persons evaluating. You have to compare their results, and you have to make a decision. But what is the added value? And then subtract the added value from the price, and then you get your winner. So it takes a lot more effort on the side of the contracting authorities to work with meat. That leaves me to some final thoughts after all these, and excuse me for that, but all these numbers, but I wanted to give you a real insight in what's actually happening, and not just some examples of it could be this way, it could be that way, but some real percentages and some real insight in what's the difference once you started working with meat.